Every decision you make still exists somewhere. According to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, reality does not choose a single outcome. It unfolds every possible one. When a quantum event can go left or right, the universe doesn't decide. It splits. Both paths occur, each within its own equally real branch of existence. At the subatomic level, particles do not have definite states until measured. They exist in superpositions, overlapping possibilities. In the traditional view, measurement collapses that uncertainty into a single result. But the many worlds paradox refuses collapse entirely. It claims that nothing is destroyed, only divided. The universe evolves deterministically, but into a fractal of diverging realities where every potential outcome becomes actual. This means that in one world, you turned left instead of right. In another, you never even asked the question. The multiverse becomes not a fantasy of infinite realms, but the logical consequence of quantum consistency, the cost of never losing information. To keep physics exact, reality must multiply. Yet the paradox cuts deeper. If every possible version of you continues somewhere, then what does you even mean? The act of choosing no longer creates a single timeline, but fractures identity into countless valid continuations. You still exist, but so does every alternative that could have existed. The many worlds paradox does not ask if the other versions are real. It insists they must be. Every instant of your life, reality branches in silence, duplicating not just worlds, but observers. The version reading these words is only one among uncountable reflections, each certain it is the original. Somewhere, another you just looked away, and both of you are right. When the universe branches, nothing actually tears apart. Space does not duplicate like a cell dividing under a microscope. Instead, the split occurs in the fabric of quantum information itself, a separation of states within the universal wave function. In quantum mechanics, every system is described by a wave function, a mathematical expression encoding all possible configurations it can take. When two systems interact, say an atom and a measuring device, their wave functions become entangled. This means their states are no longer independent. Each possible outcome of one is tied to a corresponding outcome of the other. The observer and the observed become one inseparable equation. The paradox emerges when we ask, if the equation contains every possibility, why do we only experience one? The many worlds answer is radical in its simplicity. We don't. Each possible outcome corresponds to a separate, non-communicating branch of the universal wave function. Nothing collapses. The entire structure continues to evolve, maintaining all alternatives. What appears as a single reality from inside one branch is, from the outside, just one strand of a far larger, interference-free web. Energy is never divided because the total wave function remains whole. The splitting is not material duplication, but informational differentiation, like a melody harmonizing into multiple lines without gaining extra notes. From within, it feels like a singular unfolding. From beyond, it's a cosmic polyphony where every note persists. Decoherence, the physical process that isolates branches, ensures that each version no longer interferes with the others. Once a particle interacts with countless environmental factors, its alternatives become separated beyond retrieval. Worlds drift apart, invisible and irreversible. You never notice the moment you diverge because consciousness rides only one thread of the wave function. But that thread was never the only one. You simply stopped being aware of the others. They did not stop being real. The universe may branch constantly, but you never feel the fracture. Every quantum decision, every microscopic divergence multiplies versions of you, yet awareness remains seamless, singular, unbroken. This is the observer's illusion, the paradox that you experience one continuous world in a reality that never stops dividing. To understand why, we must return to the quantum principle that destroyed the boundary between observer and observed. In classical physics, measurement is passive. You can watch without changing the system. But in the quantum world, observation is participation. The moment you measure a particle's spin, your neurons, your instrument, and the particle become entangled, bound into one mathematical object described by a single wave function. Each possible result of the measurement now corresponds to a distinct, equally real state of the entire observer system pair. If the particle could be both up and down, then so must you. In one branch you saw up, in another you saw down. Both versions share the same past, but diverge at that instant of observation. Yet neither feels the split because decoherence, the rapid loss of quantum interference with the environment, isolates these branches before the brain could ever detect superposition. Each version of you inherits a perfectly consistent memory of how things always were. The illusion of continuity survives, even as identity bifurcates into uncountable, parallel narratives. Inside a branch, everything still obeys classical logic. You remember one outcome. You expect one future. From within, reality feels complete. But from the external mathematical view, the God's eye perspective of the wave function, there was never a single you to begin with, only a constantly differentiating network of correlated states. Consciousness cannot experience the split because awareness is not a detached observer hovering over possibilities. It is the physical process of one branch perceiving itself. To feel the branching would require access to all versions at once, but that is precisely what decoherence forbids. The self that knows I exist can only exist inside one timeline, sealed off from its siblings. The result is both comforting and vertiginous. Every moment you believe you are continuous, countless other continuities unfold, equally sure of their own unity. The many worlds paradox does not fracture your consciousness. It multiplies its certainty. Each copy believes it is the only one who never split. If the universe splits for every possible outcome, then death itself becomes uncertain. The many worlds framework suggests that for every branch where a fatal event occurs, there exists another where it does not. From a first-person perspective, from the point of view of consciousness, you could only ever continue in the branch where you survive. This is the unsettling logic behind what physicists call quantum immortality. Imagine a deadly quantum experiment. A particle's spin determines whether a machine fires a bullet. In half of all branches, the gun goes off. In the others, it doesn't. Each outcome creates a new version of you. In most worlds, you die. But in at least one, you live. And that surviving version remains the only one that experiences continuity. From within that thread, it feels as though the gun simply misfired, again and again. To the observer, survival becomes inevitable, even if astronomically improbable. This idea doesn't claim that your body cannot perish in countless branches. It insists that your subjective awareness never follows those paths. Consciousness would always find itself in the version that continues. The laws of physics do not protect you. Probability does. Somewhere in the branching web of the multiverse, there is always a strand where your heart still beats. The paradox lies in the fact that, from your own viewpoint, you could never detect the branches where it didn't. But immortality in this sense is not life without end. It's existence without conclusion. You might awaken again and again in worlds where you narrowly survive, each more improbable than the last. From the inside, time stretches endlessly forward. From the outside, your lineage of survival becomes just one improbable filament in an infinite tangle of loss. The self that endures is not chosen by fate, but by the structure of probability itself. Every death that could have happened does, but never to the version still asking what it means. In the many worlds paradox, even mortality is divided, an event both final and never truly complete. Somewhere, you've already died countless times, yet the only version that remains to wonder about it is the one that never did. If the universe continually divides, what keeps your awareness from scattering across its infinite possibilities? How does a single mind persist as a coherent line through a fractal of existence? The answer lies in how quantum mechanics safeguards continuity, even as it multiplies reality, through the structure of the wave function itself. In the many worlds framework, every branch of the universe evolves according to the same deterministic equation, the Schrödinger equation. Nothing random is ever introduced. What we call chance is merely the observer's limited access to the total wave function. From a universal viewpoint, every potential state already exists, perfectly ordered. The branching is not chaos, it is geometry, a smooth unfolding of separations encoded in the mathematics of quantum evolution. Within that geometry, each version of an observer follows one internally consistent trajectory through space-time. Decoherence ensures that branches remain distinct. Once information about a quantum event leaks into the environment, light scattering off particles, air molecules colliding, neurons firing, interference between possibilities becomes practically impossible. Each resulting branch forms its own self-contained narrative, sealed by the physics of irreversibility. Consciousness, which depends on stable patterns of information in the brain, can only arise within such consistent frameworks. In this sense, the mind does not choose a branch. it emerges inside one. Awareness is the coherent experience of a single history, the smooth traversal of one path through the wave function's vast landscape. You never feel the branching because there is no you outside the branch to compare it against. The observer is not navigating multiple realities. The observer is the continuity that makes one of them feel whole. What appears to be identity is, in physical terms, a localized thread of informational coherence, a quantum trajectory that maintains self-consistency as it evolves. Each version of you rides its own causal river, unaware that countless others flow parallel just beyond perception. Continuity, then, is not the absence of division. It is the illusion sustained by it. The mind's seamless experience of self is the shadow cast by the multiverse's infinite differentiation, the feeling of being one, born from being many. Every heartbeat you count belongs to a single branch, but the rhythm itself echoes across all of them. Entanglement is the universe's way of saying that separation is an illusion. Two particles once interacted no longer possess independent realities. Their properties are correlated instantaneously across any distance. Measure one and the other knows instantly, not through a hidden signal, but because they were never truly distinct to begin with. In the many worlds paradox, this same principle extends to consciousness itself. If everything becomes entangled through interaction, then you are not confined to a single location, body, or even timeline. At the quantum level, individuality dissolves. The atoms of your brain are continuously exchanging photons with the surrounding air, radiation, and the rest of the cosmos. Physically, you are entangled with the world that observes you. What you call the self is a statistical boundary, a region of correlated information within a field of universal connection. The illusion of being a discrete observer arises only because decoherence prevents you from perceiving the full web of entanglement that binds you to everything else. In the many worlds picture, this web doesn't collapse when you make a choice. It simply reorganizes, creating new alignments across countless branches. Each version of you carries forward a slightly altered pattern of correlations, not a separate consciousness appearing out of nowhere, but a redistribution of the same quantum fabric. Identity, in this view, is not something you possess. It is something the universe continuously computes. This realization dismantles the traditional notion of individuality. If entanglement ensures that no system is ever isolated, then you are not a single observer watching the world. You are the world observing itself from one of many self-consistent angles. Your sense of autonomy emerges from the universe's self-referential structure, not from a soul detached from it. To be conscious, then, is not to own awareness, but to participate in it. Entanglement means that the boundary between mind and matter, self and cosmos, is mathematically porous. You are not a point in space. You are a pattern in the total wave function, one of the ways reality momentarily becomes aware of its own existence. Every interaction you have rewrites that pattern, slightly shifting the coordinates of you across the lattice of worlds. The observer never stands apart from what is observed, because in truth, they were never separate at all. Quantum mechanics appears to run on chance. Every particle, every measurement, seems to obey probabilities rather than certainties, as if reality rolls dice beneath its equations. But in the many worlds framework, randomness does not exist. The universe does not gamble. It calculates. What we call probability is simply the shadow cast by determinism when viewed from within one branch of the multiverse. The Schrödinger equation, the fundamental law governing quantum evolution, is perfectly deterministic. Given the initial wave function, every future configuration of the universe follows inevitably. Yet from the inside, within a single branch, observers perceive outcomes that appear random because they are unaware of the simultaneous existence of all others. When you flip a quantum coin, you see heads or tails, never both, but both occur, and each version of you witnesses one. The illusion of chance arises because consciousness inhabits only one of those results. In this sense, probability measures not what could happen, but how many versions of you will experience each outcome. A 70% chance of heads does not mean the universe prefers heads. It means that in 70% of the resulting branches, the observer's history includes that outcome. The laws of statistics describe not uncertainty, but distribution, the weight of existence across the multiverse. This view dissolves randomness into structure. Every quantum event is predetermined by the wave function, yet still unpredictable to any one observer because they cannot see beyond their branch. You experience probability the way a character in a book experiences suspense. Not because the story is uncertain, but because the page you occupy hasn't revealed the next line. The paradox is profound. The universe feels indeterminate precisely because it isn't. Chance becomes the language of ignorance inside a system that is already complete. What we call luck is just the geometry of branching seen from one limited point of view, the mind's way of narrating its position within infinite order. So every toss, every gamble, every uncertain choice is not randomness at play, but the unfolding of inevitability. The dice never roll, they simply divide. And every outcome, including the one you believe you witnessed by chance, was written into the wave function from the start. In the traditional view of quantum mechanics, measurement is an act of collapse, a mysterious event where all possible outcomes vanish except one. The wave function, once a cloud of probabilities, is said to choose a single state upon observation. But in the many worlds interpretation, this collapse never occurs. Nothing disappears. Nothing is chosen. The illusion of collapse is simply what it feels like to inhabit one branch of a universe that never stops dividing. Every quantum system, an atom, a photon, a human brain, is described by a wave function that evolves smoothly and predictably according to the Schrödinger equation. When an observer measures that system, the two become entangled, forming a joint state that contains all possible combinations of outcomes. Decoherence then does its silent work. As the measurement's result interacts with countless environmental factors, the different components of the wave function lose their ability to interfere. The universe doesn't collapse. It decomposes into non-communicating branches, each representing one realized version of the event. From inside one branch, an observer perceives only a single outcome and concludes that the wave function has collapsed. But this is merely a perspectival illusion, the narrowing of awareness to one consistent history among many. The universal wave function continues, whole and unbroken, its vast superposition intact. The act of measurement does not destroy information. It reassigns it, partitioning reality into coherent fragments that no longer overlap. This reinterpretation transforms one of physics' deepest mysteries into a matter of perspective. What seems like a discontinuity in nature is actually continuity viewed from within division. Reality never makes choices. It realizes every possibility, each in its own isolated narrative. The collapse is not a physical process but a cognitive one, the internal experience of occupying a single thread within an ever-branching totality. The paradox is that observation feels singular because it must feel singular. Consciousness depends on coherence. To perceive many outcomes at once would be to cease existing as a unified observer. The mind's stability requires the universe's fragmentation. What you call measurement is not the universe answering your question. It is the moment the universe multiplies to include every possible answer. And in each world, you believe yours is the only one that made sense. Every branch of the multiverse is a record. What we call the present is not a fleeting moment, but a layer of stored information within the universal wave function, a cosmic memory that never erases itself. The many worlds paradox insists that no event, no particle, no thought is ever truly gone. It only becomes inaccessible, separated from the version of you that remembers it. In physics, this principle emerges from the unitarity of quantum mechanics, the law that evolution through time must preserve total information. Even when systems appear to lose data, like a burning paper dissolving into ash and light, the wave function describing every particle still contains all correlations needed to reconstruct what once existed. The information isn't destroyed, it's dispersed into complexity so vast that retrieval becomes effectively impossible. Reality forgets nothing. It only hides its memories in dimensions we no longer inhabit. This permanence extends to you. Every decision, every sensation, every heartbeat exists as an encoded pattern within the total wave function. When your branch diverges, it doesn't overwrite the past, it extends it. The you who chose differently still persists, carrying the memory of an alternate life that continues beyond your reach. Each fragment of existence is a permanent entry in the universe's infinite archive, written in the correlations between particles that will never fully decohere. Black hole physics reveals the same truth in its most extreme form. Hawking radiation, once thought to erase the information of anything that falls within an event horizon, now appears to preserve it through subtle quantum correlations. Even the most absolute disappearance conceals conservation. The cosmos functions as a perfect accountant. Not a single bit is lost, only redistributed. The paradox is that forgetting, both personal and physical, is an illusion of perspective. When you lose a memory, or when matter dissolves into radiation, the underlying information continues to exist elsewhere, embedded in the structure of the universe's total state. What dies in one branch is remembered in another. What fades here remains vivid there. Every breath, every word, every vanished world still echoes within the unbroken mathematics of being. The past is not behind us, it is beside us, continuing forever in the invisible architecture of quantum continuity. You will never find what was lost, because it was never truly gone. If every possible decision is realized somewhere in the multiverse, what does it mean to choose? The many worlds paradox confronts free will at its core, not by denying agency, but by dissolving its exclusivity. Every action you could take, every hesitation, every reversal, every impulse restrained or fulfilled, unfolds in a different branch. From the outside, all choices are equally real. From the inside, you experience only one, and call it yours. In classical thinking, free will implies the power to select one outcome among many. But in a universe that branches deterministically, nothing is excluded. The wave function evolves according to precise mathematical law. All possibilities coexist, woven into the same total structure. The feeling of deciding arises because each conscious version of you perceives only its own path, unaware that others continue beyond perception. Choice, then, is not the act of creating one reality instead of another. It is the process by which consciousness identifies with one thread among infinite continuations. This interpretation doesn't make your decisions meaningless. It redefines what meaning is. Each branch still contains intentions, consequences, and coherence. Every version of you experiences authentic causality within its own timeline. The moral weight of your actions remains, because within your branch, those outcomes are absolute. Yet in the universal sense, all contradictions coexist. The savior and the betrayer, the silence and the confession, the one who stayed and the one who left. You are every possibility simultaneously, but you can only live one at a time. The paradox of free will in the many worlds universe is that you cannot change the whole, but you continuously determine which version of yourself experiences continuity. The wave function does not ask what you will choose. It already contains every answer. What shifts is the perspective from which you perceive the unfolding. Thus, control becomes local, not universal. You are free within the branch, bound across them. Destiny and choice merge into the same motion, the unfolding of deterministic law through conscious participation. In this framework, free will is neither illusion nor sovereignty. It is the lens through which a single observer experiences inevitability as decision. You never escape the script. You just discover which role you're still playing. At first glance, the many worlds paradox seems to shatter existence into incomprehensible multiplicity. Infinite versions of you, infinite worlds, infinite contradictions. Yet the deeper one follows the mathematics, the more another pattern emerges. Coherence, not chaos. The universe may divide endlessly, but it divides in harmony. Every branch, every variation, is a reflection of one underlying equation that never breaks. Beneath the infinite mirror of realities lies a single continuous symmetry, the universal wave function itself. This wave function is not a collection of separate worlds floating apart in space. It is the total state of everything that exists, an unbroken geometry of possibility. What we call worlds are simply perspectives within it, regions of coherence where interference has vanished. Each branch is a different self-consistent interpretation of the same global truth. The multiplicity you perceive is not disorder. It is the necessary structure through which unity expresses itself without collapse. In that sense, the many worlds interpretation is not about infinite worlds at all, but about one world seen infinitely. Each fragment of it reflects the same underlying laws, the same conservation of information, the same mathematical heartbeat. Just as every piece of a hologram contains the pattern of the whole image, every version of you contains the entire logic of existence, refracted through a unique history. The multiverse is not a scattering of independent universes. It is one universe viewed from every possible angle at once. This restores coherence to the paradox. Division is not destruction, and multiplicity is not madness. The very act of branching preserves the totality of being. The universe never loses unity. It simply hides it inside complexity so vast that wholeness appears fragmented. What we call many worlds are the echoes of one continuous act of existence, unfolding all its potential simultaneously. If you could step outside your branch, beyond decoherence, beyond observation, you would not see infinite worlds. You would see a single equation describing every possible truth at once. The multiverse would collapse back into the pure symmetry of being, one structure containing all differences without contradiction. And you would realize that the fracture you feared was never real. It was simply the universe learning how to see itself from within. The paradox ends where it began, with you. The observer who never feels the split, the consciousness that rides one thread through infinite possibility, stands again at the center of the question, which world is real? The answer at last is disarmingly simple. All of them are. Reality did not choose, it unfolded. Every decision, every event, every outcome still exists, not as fiction, but as geometry, eternally encoded in the universal wave function that contains them all. You were never meant to navigate all worlds. You were meant to complete one. The mind's coherence depends on narrowing the infinite into a single consistent story, a continuous line of awareness through the quantum tapestry. And yet, behind that narrow focus, the totality remains, infinite branches humming in silence, each alive with a version of you that kept going. The paradox dissolves not by resolution, but by recognition. Unity and multiplicity are not opposite. They are the same structure, seen from two scales of understanding. The many worlds paradox, once a riddle of existence, reveals itself as a mirror of consciousness. The universe does not merely branch around you, it branches through you. Every thought is a measurement, every perception a division, every act of observation another way the cosmos becomes aware of itself. The self you feel is not isolated. It is the local experience of an infinite process still unfolding everywhere at once, so nothing truly ends. Every version of you continues somewhere, following its own trajectory through the eternal equation. What dies in one world breathes in another. What you call fate is simply the thread your awareness follows among uncountable continuities. You are the witness that the universe left behind in every world it became, the one who cannot step outside reality. Because reality is the act of being you, here, now. And in this single instant of observation, infinite worlds remember themselves. Write in the comments, I still exist in the version that observes, because you do.